money, and you're just thinking you've come to some kind of guy who's gone off on some tangent to living moneyless. But money is both a symptom of and a perpetuator of the illusion of separation between all of us. So for example, as a symptom, the way we charge each other, for example, today, we all charge each other for everything we do, right? So nature gives us this stuff for free, like the blackberry. When you're going to brambles and you're picking berries, nature doesn't go, "Have you been naughty or have you been nice today?" It just gives unconditionally. That's the way of nature. It's this unconditional, organic flow of life. But then humans come in because at some point, somewhere along the line, we started to think, actually, we're outside of all this. We've got dominion over the earth, and this has all been laid on for. This is our playground. And the way we act between each other now, it's no more ridiculous than your penis or your clitoris charging your knees for the experience of an orgasm. It's if you can understand that this is all one part of the whole, right? Like my legs, my penis, my head, my arms are all interconnected. They all do their part in the whole grand scheme of things because it benefits the whole. To think otherwise would be ridiculous. But if you can see the universe or the organism that we call Gaia or Earth as being a whole, then for each of the individual manifestations of that to charge each other, it's just ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's like if I scratch my face here, should my hand charge my head for scratching my face? Again, it's ludicrous to think that. But this is why it comes back to your sense of self. Like, what are you? And when you can get the understanding that actually we're part of a bigger whole, and if we could find the cultural story that helps us to kind of co-create things and live together in the same way that nature gives to us. Like it's an insult to nature for us to take stuff from her and then pass it on in a completely different manner. It's like we own this thing, and I own this piece of land, and the stuff that comes here is now mine. And that's the cultural story behind of all of what we do today. And I believe until we really change that cultural story, it's not even about saving the planet. It's about actually making a planet worth living on. It's about. I'm kind of going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I believe that prostitution is to sex what buying and selling is to giving and receiving. And this isn't a social comment on prostitution, but I'm trying to say that if you can imagine the difference between having sex and making love to somebody who you love deeply, just think of the difference and how that feels. And then think how different it is if you actually paid for sex and making love to somebody who you care about deeply. Think about the difference of how that feels. And every single day we're living in a way where we're kind of very, very subtly kind of exaggerating that story a little bit. Every time we go to somebody and we say, I'll do this for you, or I'll give you this, but I want something in return. That has a grossly underestimated effect on us as human beings. It's like we live in a world of conditionality. We live in a world where we'll only have our needs met, or people will only look after us if we give something in return. And this story starts from the moment we're born. It slowly gears itself up. And you look when you go into school, from Santa Claus upwards, the story of conditionality is drummed into us. And then it makes us really productive. It means we got to work the whole time in order to get other stuff, and that meets a certain agenda. But to go back to I said money was a symptom of and a perpetuator of the illusion of separation. I've covered the symptom bit in a way, but perpetuator, because money allows us to have fine division of labour and kind of high economies of scale. I call it an invasive weed that allows the kind of natural division of labour and the natural economies of scale that would happen in a kind of a small community. It allows that to go to the maximum as opposed to the optimum. So in a small community where there's trust relationships, Robin Dunbar's has got this number 150, which is what he, through anthropological studies, has said that it's the most people we can know at any one time, have a proper relationship with. But money allows that the economies of scale and division of labour to get more and more and more and more. And the result of the economies of scale and division of labour going to the maximum as opposed to the optimum is that it completely disconnects us from what we consume. So if you think, right, it also gives us the illusion of independence. Yeah? We all like to think we're all independent people these days. It's a very nice buzzword, saying, oh yeah, like I've got like 10 grand in the bank, I'm independent, I look after myself, I'm not reliant on anybody. It's complete bullshit to think that you're independent, right? The problem now is that it's not that you're independent, it's just you're dependent on strangers as opposed to being dependent on people in your local community. Like when you go, like it's not like you're feeding yourself, so you're dependent on somebody. You're at the very minimum, you're dependent on earthworms, you're dependent on bees, you're dependent on oxygen, you're dependent on the whole web of life. But money gives us this illusion that we're actually independent. And the reality is you're just dependent on the cashier in Tesco's most of the time, or the guy who produced the wine in Chile, that you'll never get to have a real relationship with. And there's two results of this. One is on the macro scale where because we don't see the things that happen every day with kind of embodied in the stuff that we buy, lots of shit happens, basically. Like because if we had to, for example, if we had to grow our own food, we wouldn't waste a third of it as we do in the UK, and I think it's 50% in the US, because you have a relationship with that food. If your mate Dave grew the food for you, it's one more degree of separation, but at least you have a relationship with Dave, and you think, God, Dave's just spent 3 days last week growing all this food. I'm not going to chuck that in the bin. Then Dave's mate John creates the food for you, and you think, well, John seems like a nice guy. I met him for a pint last week, but you see where I'm going. You become less and less kind of the less relationship you have with stuff, then the more likely you are to disrespect it. Like if we had to clean our own drinking water, we wouldn't shit and piss in it. I can guarantee you. I don't know if anybody here has tried to clean water for drinking that's had poo in it. It's not easy. But yet, because we don't have to take responsibility for that, because we don't even know what's happening. Like who went to the loo this morning and thought, God, this is terrible what I'm doing. Probably we got one guy, like 200 or 300 people, felt terrible about going to the loo. I hate going to the loo these days, because I've been in the city for the last month or two, and it's just a horrific experience. We talk about spirituality, and how we're like spiritual beings and stuff. Like spirituality is what you do every day. It's not something we sit in cafes about and and drink cappuccinos and kind of have nice philosophical conversations. It's about what you do every day. Your life is a far greater example of your spirituality than what you talk about. And the fact that we pee and poo in a water supply does not reflect well on us as a species, because of what that does to entire ecosystems and to ourselves, to the very core of ourselves. And well, I went off on a bit of a tangent there. What was it? I was talking about pee and poo again. One of my favourite subjects.
Separation from money and separation.
Separation from money, yeah. Money causes this separation. Take another example. Like, for years I knew what wars in the Middle East were over and stuff, and I know that we're looking for resources and so on. I think anybody's half clued in at all knows that it's not for altruistic reasons and stuff. We go off and bomb millions of people. But yet I still engaged, this is back in 2000, I still engaged in the fossil fuel industry. I consumed as much as anybody else. you know, I'd take flights every here and there and stuff, and I just didn't make the connections. And then I went to Calais one day to a refugee camp in Calais, and I met a bunch of Iraqi refugees, and I sat with them. I was meant to be for 10 minutes, and I ended up being there for a day, and I just cried, and they cried, and they told me their stories, and they told me how many members of their family they lost, you know, and what they had to do to get over to the country that was bombing them, you know, and be shut out. And seeing the eyes of these people, actually meeting them and connecting with them as a human being to human being, not over YouTube or not over the internet or over whatever, actually connecting with them as people. I just thought there's no fucking way in the world I'm using oil again to this extent, or any extent if I possibly can. It's like, we pay lip service to caring about people, we pay lip service about the environment and all these beautiful ideals, but then we carry on regardless doing the stuff that we do. And if it was our family who were going to get wiped out by the next bomb, what would you want us to do? Like, would you want us to carry on, you know, with the status quo and just keep doing the same old, making a few things like filling the kettle halfway and so on? Or would you want us to make some serious changes to